As a filmmaker, what are the advantages, do you think, being both the writer and the director on a project?
Well, I think you just know the material better. Again, I came up with the idea because it's based on my previous movie, Good Day for It, which James Wolfe also wrote for me there. So I had the secondary idea for this then, which is a kind of a continuation of theme. And so I usually get, call James, who we've worked together for a while now, and he's great at breaking the 3 act structure and really setting up the entire kind of plot line and all. And then, then I usually come in as a director. I always would do, my polish, but on this one, it took so long to get it made that I actually wrote some additional materials as we went on, including the cemetery scene with between Tony and Anson, because I thought it needed some more weight in the first act to separate it from an action picture. So the plus side is you really, really know the material. I just was asked about what advice I had for young filmmakers, and that's one of the ones, because even if you're just the director, the pressure becomes so strong on set, and especially if you're on a limited budget, limited schedule, so that when it's in the 12th hour and everybody's staring at you, you really need to know, did you get the most important moment you needed in this scene so you could stop, or you have to go more. And so I think that's the better part of being a writer director as opposed to just a director. So
for you, with Anson obviously taking the role of the central protagonist, what made him so ideal in terms of that particular role, and why was that particular choice made?
Of casting Anson? Yeah, well, first, I knew him. I met him 10 years prior on a different project of mine, so I got to meet him as a human being, and I knew he was theater trained. I knew he was down to earth, and I knew he was intelligent, and I thought all those needed to be part of this character, because my whole big thing was to separate this from an action picture. I mean, the producer in me goes along with my distributors around the world that know how to sell the movie, but it's not, obviously it's a character-driven thriller. And so I needed somebody that had substance, and just having a couple conversations with him and meeting him in person earlier, I knew he was at a higher level than some of his television work. And at the time, he was just finishing his series Hell on Wheels. So this character is kind of like an old Western gunslinger. So that worked for me, that kind of Western sensibility within him, because he's actually born in Tennessee. And then also just knowing that as a theater trained guy, he would be able to break down that entire run and know his little bits and moments to start to change. So, I thought he did great. And of course, not to mention, he's a pretty handsome guy as a leading man in a movie.
So for me, the first thing that sprang to mind whilst I was watching the film was Anton Corbijn's The American, in terms of tone, in terms of the George Clooney picture.
No, I did say I saw it. I don't remember it enough, but I definitely. But I'm like, as you could tell, I'm an old timer. I go way back to these influences. Go back to really the 40s are my main things. But in the modern era, it would be Blood Simple. It would be Drive. It would be a little Memento in there, just because of that, the way the thing came back at the end with the flashbacks. And I mean, Tony and I talk about this a lot because he's a fan of film noir, and Carol Reed and The Third Man, which was actually just on television here last night again. Just in terms, we had some really subtle Dutch angles for the coverage and all, but just that, and Michael Powell. I mean, to me, I grew up watching all those movies. So
I was going to ask you, one of my questions later on is, it seems there's quite a few film noir influences in there.
It was a mix. I mean, we'll go back to, again, I borrowed from obviously a few people, but even Hitchcockian in not, he never really worked film noir, but a mystery suspense, obviously, the master. And so most people don't ever remember or even know the MacGuffin, right? And clearly I just took it because White Rivers, with all those videos behind you, and knowing that you're a writer of well repute there, you would get it. I mean, it's just the MacGuffin. White Rivers. What is it? It's the Maltese Falcon. It's the thing that dreams are made of, right?
Yeah.
Or in The Usual Suspects, it's Kaiser Sose. And
this is the thing, because I was going to ask you about, obviously you've got character actors in there rather than what I like to think as movie stars, and whether that was a conscious choice, because you obviously got David Morse in there, you've got Eddie Marsden in there, and they're in really small roles, but they're very important, and you've got lots of interlinking little multiple threads, but you've got a very limited amount of locations as well. So it feels very.
That's because you're exactly spot on. Listen, it started as a producer. It started as, I want to go shoot again in the diner so I can control the entire environment and not spend a lot of money.
Yeah, sure.
And for me, I mean, spending money in movies for me is putting it on screen, and the best way to do that is get the best cast. And luckily, happily, the script was reading like what we're talking about, and anybody that had met me knew that I don't work in action or comic books or anything like that. Two of my movies were plays, so they get it. And even later, when Eddie Marsden, who's Richard Brake's best friend, so Richard I knew from Good Day for It, and Richard's in London, and Richard and Eddie are friends, and when I gave the script to Richard, because I knew I wanted him in it, he's like, man, this is really cool. This just reminds me of the old movies. He goes, you mind if I give it to Eddie? And I'm like, of course. What, are you kidding me? And it was smart, but I'm like, there's not a lot there, but yeah. And so fate worked out great. They were together. He wasn't doing anything. He had just finished, I think, Ray Donovan.
Yeah.
So he was flying. He was used to that, flying back and forth to the States on the weekends.
Yeah,
sure. And then we had the deputy was the last part, and David Morse now lives in the Philadelphia region where we shot the movie in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, and he was at the same agency. And when he, obviously now it went out to him with Anthony Hopkins, Anson Mount, Abbie Cornish, Eddie Marsden, but even that, because that was a tough part for him, the deputy, because you're not exactly sure at all where he fits into that.
Yeah, exactly.
Drama, right? But no, that was my focus on purpose, and especially to separate it from anybody mistaking this as an action assassin movie, which it has those elements, but that's not really what it's about.
I was gonna say, because it would be remiss of me not to mention, obviously Anthony Hopkins, the recent Oscar win. Some people would perceive him to be a movie star, even though he is a character actor, and although he is classically trained as an RSC on the stage. I have to ask how he gets involved, because obviously, he's not known. He's getting older. We're all getting older, so he has to pick his projects more carefully. I would imagine it has to really draw him in, and there has to be something there for him to get his teeth into. So it's more about how you got him involved and what those conversations might have been about.
Well, there's two reasons. One, I think that anything I do, I think it's the greatest thing in the world, number one. I mean, you shouldn't be surprised by that comment, and neither should any of your followers and friends and filmmakers, or you have to believe that. So once we got Anson involved, he switched agencies and went to UTA, United Talent Agency. And they were, covered the script internally. Then they start to send you lists of other people. And Abbie Cornish was there at that time. That's where her name came up on a short list. So, and then I met her and I liked her. But for the part of the mentor, I was feeling pretty good. And I was like, look, can you just go internally and tell me if there's anybody there in the agency that's above 70
Yeah.
that wants to come and do this. I mean, I have some money, and really it was just a cold shot in the dark, because when his name came up, and I was like, really? I mean, and again, go back to the fact that I think I'm pretty special, myself, but I was like, even that, I was like, no, but I was talking about, Michael Douglas, Harrison Ford, guys like that were at that agency, right? And they were like, no, don't, he's busy, don't waste time. And nobody likes to have their time wasted. So I was like, really? Well, absolutely, I can't not take a chance.
Yeah.
And really just had them send it to him through his agent. And 2 months went by, and I got a call, and his agent said, hey, Tony likes this and wants to talk to you. And so you can imagine that call to me. And we had one conversation 2 years prior, because we had to wait for his schedule. And he dissected in the first phone call, he dissected the speech in the cemetery to the letter, asking me then if he could change a couple words.
I tell you, I was lucky enough. I was part of a Q&A session for the father that they did,
right?
And there was himself and Olivia Colman and the director on the call with somebody else, and he's the most humble man. I mean, just listening to him, because he was doing a film called The Two Popes when the opportunity came up, and what he said during the call was, are they sure that they want me? Are they prepared to wait for me? And these are his exact words. So that sort of like a humble attitude and sort of self-deprecation on that level with someone of that, who's working at that sort of level of his profession it sort of floors you, I think. Well, at least it floored me.
Oh, I was stunned, because when we finally met, a week before shooting, we met at his hotel. We had to avoid the Malibu fires at that time, so they had moved to a hotel in Beverly Hills, and we met, and it was like meeting your best friend almost. It was at the little lunch table, his agent, my sister, and Tony, and he was like ready to come. He came up to we shot his sequences in Santa Barbara County because he couldn't travel. He was actually, I think he'd either just finished Two Popes and was about to do the Father. So your first question was correct. How in the world did he decide to do this little thing in between? Which was tremendously gratifying to me, because I know, he really responded to that cemetery scene. He had known a couple guys from Vietnam that affected him personally. This is what we discussed, and that he understood this guy, the character, almost immediately. And I think that's really what kept them involved. But yes, I mean, it was no surprise to me or anybody that knows him that he was happily asleep in Wales during the Oscars, because he genuinely doesn't care about that.
No, not at all. Very, very humble man. I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
One would be, if you had to choose between writing or directing, and you could either have one or the other, but not both, creatively, which one would you choose?
Directing.
Yeah, and why would
writing is just too hard for me. I have 5 scripts now that I'm working on, and 3 of them are mine that are, all from the start, and it's just painful. Exactly rewarding, obviously, but painful. So as much as we, always try to stand off and not have people besiege us with scripts or material or that stuff, we're all dying to just, at this point now, used to be, open up the mail and get that script, and now I just get that download and have it be great. But so directing for me is where I came from. But I, having said that, I mean, I always work on everything that I direct. So, but yeah, directing would be higher than writing for me, just because it's just, you're not alone in a room, right, with an empty.
An empty. You always have to start from an empty screen. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's always fun. I've got one more question for you, and it's completely off topic. Can you describe for me your perfect Sunday afternoon?
I can, because I'm here. Actually, I split my time now between my ranch in California and my home back in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
I was in Manhattan for 28 years after I went to NYU grad film. So I had the big city life during the heyday of the 80s and 90s. And then, then you start to appreciate quieter and slower times. So
Mhm.
for me, we have horses, a couple cows now. And I like to just go on our Sunday. We like to go to a property and saddle up and ride for an hour or something. And then I just like to, that's usually when I do like stretching and try to clean myself up. But and of course, up here in Central Coast wine country, we like to have a glass or two, and that's
Chill out.
about it for me.
Chill
So
out and enjoy the sunset and just
I'm,
enjoy
I'm
family
perfectly
time,
happy
right?
with that. I'm perfectly happy at a pub having some whiskey too, though.
Yeah.
That's why I can't wait to come back to London.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure, and all the best with the film. And hopefully, I'll see you somewhere down the road.
Thanks very much, Mark. Appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Good
All the
luck to you.
best.